My guest for this segment of Talk It Over, coming to you from Los Angeles, is Victor Kiam. Now, you may not recognize that name instantly, but if I say the Remington shaver and try it, we'll give you your money back if it isn't the best shaver you've ever tried, I bet you'll recognize it then. He's here to speak to the Association of Independent Television Broadcasters, INTV. We asked him to join us. Welcome to the show, Victor.
Thank you, Ellen. Pleasure to be here.
We've been chatting before the show, and I was amazed by your early background. Now, if you could share that with us. People see you as this impressive businessman on television, but you started out as a barefoot boy in Louisiana.
I'm a product of the bayous. I started out, I was brought up with my grandparents, and the greatest fun we had was running around barefoot. And I was very, very upset when I attended school and I had to put shoes on. And I left Louisiana. I sometimes regret it, but I left Louisiana during the war because I was fortunate enough to get into officers' training school. That was the Second World War, in case you had any questions. And I went to school back up east, and I ended up afterwards staying there. But I'm very fortunate because the government really gave me the education that I have, and I think it's a crucial option for every child or every young adult to have education. I wouldn't be nearly as able to do the things that I've been able to do if it hadn't been for the basic education. And I was fortunate. I had undergraduate paid by the government in the V-12, and then I had active duty, and then I went to the University of Paris, the Sorbonne, and used the GI Bill, and then the Harvard Business School on the GI Bill. So I've just been blessed.
And when you were at the Harvard Business School, you mentioned that most of the other people there came from family wealth and were going to go back and inherit their family's company.
Either family wealth or from a corporate environment where their father had a very prominent position and they fully expected to go into that corporation. I think it was a stronger situation of nepotism in those days than it exists today. Today, I think these business schools are much more varied and diverse and will take many more people who don't have that type of background. But business schools back then were very limited, and the Harvard Business School was the finest, so everybody wanted their child to go there, and particularly those with family businesses. And when I left the business school, I said to myself, heck, these other fellas, they're pretty good, but I think I'm just as good as they are, and they're going to end up in positions of prominence. And if I'm going to do that, I'm going to have to work at it. And I looked at it from another aspect and said, most of my life, unless I'm very, very lucky, is going to be spent working. If you think of yourself, unless you sleep 12 hours a day, the bulk of your life is going to be working. So do the best job you can. And that's what I've tried to do. And I think that's one of the problems with the United States today, is that so many people think of work as something they got to get through with as quickly as possible. Just get it done, put in the time, and then go home and relax, look at your television set, and drink your beer, and enjoy yourself. And to me, that's one of the failures of our society today.
But as you worked all these years, you told me beforehand that you always picked companies or people that you really enjoyed working for.
Oh, first of all,
Some of the problems of shooting on location, as you can hear.
That's all right. The world runs by the telephone. I think that people are the most important thing in life, and I think a company, is a person. Really, it's like a baby. It's made up of people, and therefore you can't look at a company as a thing. It's really a vibrant situation that has a personality of its own. It's the personality that you can help mold and create, but you have a success or failure dependent on the people they're in, and therefore it's a people's business. And just like life is a people's business. And I like most people. I have very few people I don't like, and some I have admired and respected. And those are the people I've tried to associate myself with in life.
You had stories about when you were out on the road selling when you first began. And I love the story about how you ended up faking being a makeup expert. Could you share that with us?
Well, this was back in 1952. I mean, it's a long, long time ago. And I was a very young man at that time. I guess I must have been about 25. And we had a new product at Lever Brothers, which was an iridescent material that you could put in the makeup to eliminate the shadow lines that occur when you have lines. Your lines are not as deep as they appear because they are deepened by the groove that the shadow creates. So we hired the company hired a makeup artist named Kiva Hoffman, who had been the head of Paramount Pictures Makeup, who developed this. And unfortunately, I must tell you that it changed, and depending on the light you were under. If you got under neon, all of a sudden you glowed. But during daylight, it helped eliminate the shadows. And we'd set up promotions in Cleveland, Akron, and Youngstown, which was my territory, because we'd sold more of this product than any other area of the country, and so they decided to do the national break. And Mr. Hoffman himself, which was very impressive, was coming out to do it in Cleveland, and another makeup artist was going to do it in Akron and Youngstown. And when I met them at the plane, the other makeup artist was not on the plane, and he'd gotten sick. And I'd worked hard to set up these promotions. And I thought to myself, what the devil am I going to do? And I finally said, look, Kiva, can you teach me to be a makeup artist in a day and a half? And he said, oh boy, I don't think so. I said, well, let's try. Fortunately, he brought his secretary along. At the end of the day and a half, she was raw, but I at least knew how to make people up. He grayed my temples. I don't need that anymore, but he grayed my temples for dignity. And on Monday morning, I appeared as Mr. Omar in the main floor of McKelvey's department store in Youngstown, Ohio, and then I moved to M. O'Neill's in Akron for the rest of the week. We did 3 days in one, 3 days in the other. And it was a big success, and I was honored because the president of the store in Akron's wife came the first day, I think, to test me out, and then she came back the last day because she liked it so much.
So you can always get a job as a makeup man.
Well, I don't know. Today it's a little different.
Little
Maybe
different.
not. I have to go back into training. Another day and a half.
We'll be right back with Victor Kiam. My guest is Victor Kiam. He is the executive chief of Remington Products, Remington Shavers. Another thing you may not know about him was that he was named National Father of the Year in Business and Commerce. But right now we want to talk about how you got to where we all know you from, Remington. So you left us making up people. Where'd you go from there?
Well, I got transferred to the toiletries division of Pepsodent, which was Pepsodent toothpaste of Lever Brothers. And then the vice president of marketing of Lever had left for a new company, which is dear to your heart, was called Playtex. And I admired and respect, and I joined him as Western Regional Sales Manager. I was there for 13 years, ended up as Executive Vice President, and then the company was sold. I didn't want to go with the new company, and I found I could get backing, so I was able to arrange a buyout of the principal owners of the Benrus Watch Company. Over 8 years, we turned that into a mini conglomerate. Our sales volume reached 50 million. And in 1975, I went to China with my wife, who had been the fashion consultant for Saks Fifth Avenue, which is a high-style store, high-image store, has a great taste sense. And I did this for a jewelry company within Benrus, and we decided to go into business because she thought the items were spectacular and would sell. The corporation was not very interested in this little Chinese jewelry company, so I decided to leave the company, became a consultant, and started to build a Chinese jewelry company, which today is the largest user of jewelry from mainland China outside of Hong Kong, and we sell in the United States, England, France, Germany, and Switzerland. And it's called the Friendship Collection. And here in Los Angeles, for example, it's at Robinson's and the Broadway. And it's really been a success story on its own. It's due to my wife, who does all the styling, designing, and works with the Chinese factories and goes to China twice a year, which is a very tough grind. And right about that time, I happened to be reading a Business Week article. It was about the middle of July of '78, and I read where the chairman of the Sperry Corporation said he'd rather sell one Univac than 100,000 shavers, and I thought that was very peculiar because he owned both companies. So I called him up on Monday because I was making investments and looking at other opportunities as well. And I asked him, are you interested in selling your shaver company? Because from the tone of that Business Week article, you're not very happy with it. And he said, yes, we are. And I said, by golly, I'd be interested. And he said, well, we're talking to a lot of people. Some big companies, incidentally, were interested, and other private individuals. And he said, well, why don't you come over and talk to our chief financial officer? I did. He gave me all the books and records, and this is a rather amusing story. I brought him home and arranged them, because there were 20 corporations around the world. This is a global company. And had arranged them by year, by country, so I could study them. And my wife came home for dinner, and the dining room table was covered. And she said, honey, why don't you clean off the dining room table, because I'm going to make dinner. And I said, oh, let's eat in the kitchen, because I just took me an hour to get this thing all laid out. And she said, oh, no, I don't want to eat in the kitchen, because, you know, it's hot, and the food, and the odors and everything else. And this is usually one of her decisions. I make the big decisions, whether Uganda should invade Tanganyika and things like that. But anything that doesn't involve, you know, these major decisions, she's the boss. So reluctantly, with a hangdog expression, I started to lift the books up and slam them on the chair. And she says, what are you looking at anywhere? An awful lot of books. And I said, I'm looking at the Remington division of the Sperry Corporation. And she says, they make electric shavers, don't they? And I said, yes. She said, how can you look at that? You've never shaved electrically in your life. And I looked at her very steady in the eyes, and I said, honey, I was in the brassiere business for 12 years, and I've never won one of them either.
We'll be right back. My guest is Victor Kiam. He's the Chief Executive Officer of the Remington Corporation. We're into Remington. Now, the spreadsheets were on the table, and your wife had given you heck, but you hadn't shaved with an electric shaver, so what did you do at that point?
Well, I didn't do anything. She went out and bought the shaver, because she said, I don't care what you say, you ought to try it before you proceed. And I tried it, and I flipped, because I did not believe that an electric shaver could shave as close to the blade. I always knew they were more comfortable, more convenient, but I didn't think they could shave as close to the blade. And I flipped. And then I tried the others, and they didn't shave as well. All the other electrics, most of which have disappeared. And I went out to buy the company. Initially, I didn't think that I could. First of all, I was in competition with some big companies and other individuals. And secondly, it was a big, stiff price, $25 million. And I was very lucky, and it's a long story which I won't go into, but I was able to arrange a leveraged buyout because of my track record. The bank was willing to put up the money. The Sperry Corporation was kind enough to take back notes because they had faith I could do it. And so on March 1st, 1979, I bought the company. It had lost $30 million in the prior 4 years. Since we've had it, we've made more than $30 million. The employment level was 550 people. We now employ close to 2,000 people. Every shaver is made in Bridgeport, Connecticut, USA. We export around the world, which is very difficult in a time like this. We have a favorable balance of trade of $14 million. We are the only small electrical product that you can find in Japan that if you picked it up and looked at the bottom of it, it would say made in USA. And so I'm very proud. The unit sales of the company have gone from 1 million to 4.3 million in 3 years. That's annual sales. Our volume has gone from 47 million to 160 million. And we've become the second largest shaver company in the world, selling 1 out of every 4 people who buy an electric shaver.
What are the guide paths to the success? Are there 3 pat things you could say led to this success?
Maybe about 4 or 5. First, I got rid of a lot of people and reduced the overhead. Not workers, not the factory, executives who were sitting there and were advising and looking for consent. I have an opinion. I have a favorite statement that consensus opinion leads to mediocrity. I believe in entrepreneurship. I believe in finding the right person who's willing to move and make a decision and not have to get a whole bunch of consensus before he makes that decision. And I think to make a decision is much more, even if it's a wrong one, is more important than not making one. So we reduced the overheads. Number 2, I thought we had the best single quality product that we had, but it was overpriced. So we reduced the price, and the first year we came out, 1 month after I was there, we reduced the price of our lowest price shaver from $34.95 to $19.95.
Quite a bit.
So we expanded the market. Then we hit upon an advertising story with me doing the commercials, and I had never done any acting.
Wait, hold on, because this is a great story. We'll be right back, and we'll talk about those great Remington commercials you see on television. I'm talking to Victor Kiam, who's Chief Executive Officer of the Remington Products Company. Your commercials on television, you were about to tell us about them. I have to tell you, usually if you see an owner doing a commercial, they're really blah. I mean, hello, this is my company, buy it. They're great. How did they get so great, and why did you decide to go into it so heavily?
Well, I don't know how they got so great. That I can't answer you. But how it started was in England, where we had a dispute where I was trying to get one commercial run throughout the world, and the English agency strongly objected to it. And we had a stop for a nice habit, which was tea. And somebody asked me, how did you walk off the street and buy this company? And I told them, and they were, listening to every word. So I said, gee, you're interested in that. Would the average British person be interested? Oh, yes. So I said, why don't we make that a commercial? And they said, fine, well, we'll get a big football player to do the commercial. I said, how can you get a football player to tell the story of how I bought the company? I said, let me try to tell it. So they said, oh, well, how do you know you can act? I said, I probably can't. He said, you're American. I don't know how the British are going to react to an American doing a commercial. I said, well, we can try. Let's test it. We sat down and wrote the commercial that day. The same commercial that's shown here, there's a few settings, but what's in it? 95% was written that day. We went back in the back room, taped it, put it out for test. It tested very, very strongly. It is now running in 31 countries in 15 different languages, and I do every one of the languages myself. Konnichiwa, watashi ga. Guten Tag, ich war Überseite.
What'd you just sell me? A Remington.
No, I just said, it starts off the same. Hello, I like the Remington microscreen shaver so much, I bought the company. And that's the way they all start.
But you write them yourself.
Yes, I write them myself. We
so
produce
they fit
them.
Your
we
personality.
Produce them in my office. Right, the bathroom is my office bathroom, and the desk is my desk. And we just did a commercial for neckties because we've come out with the most fantastic neckties. There was another company that was in real trouble, and the bank came to me and asked me if I'd try to save it because there's 350 jobs in Wilmington, North Carolina, and we bought it April 1st, and we've turned it around. And we're introducing the first machine washable necktie.
That really comes out.
And exporting it. Now that's something that's very key. We're the first company to ever export neckties. Now, Americans as a group have thought of themselves as such a large market that will sell here. But I do not believe that. I think today we're in a global economy. And we're not in international trade. We're not. We're in economic global conflict. Because we're fighting for a better standard of living. Certainly the people in the Far East and throughout the world are fighting for a better standard of living. In our case, it's not whether we are going to have any meal, it's whether we can afford steak instead of chicken. But over there, it's whether they're going to eat it all. And I find that too many businesses and too many people think of the economic world of their products and their companies as limited by the geographical boundaries of the United States.
What does it cost you to produce your shaver in this country versus what it would cost you if you produced it in Hong Kong?
Well, the basic wage rate that we pay here is about $7.50 an hour, plus incentives and benefits, brings it up to about $10 an hour. We could do the same thing in Hong Kong for $1.50 an hour. But we have people, we have no union, we have no blue collars in our company, we have no white collar. All we have is one collar, the Remington collar. And so we have a company all on profit sharing. And everybody has a vital interest in this. And we keep our employees up to date. Every month I meet with the employees, not with one group or the other group, but the whole group together. And we tell them exactly how we stand and how we're doing. And so what we've got is a unity of purpose and a unity of drive for success. And that can make America great.
You have quickly, we only have 1 minute, but you have a theory about an enterprise zone. Can you tell us?
Very quickly, we have 50% of the minority youth of this country unemployed. We have 25% of the Caucasian youth. Why don't we start enterprise zone for products that are no longer made in the United States because we can't afford it because of the labor cost? Why don't we start enterprise zones that take young children, adolescents of the age of 16 to 20, men and women, and train them to be workers to get them off of welfare and we won't pay the same rate.
It would not be minimum wage.
It would not be, but we'd be paying them. They'd learn what the work ethic is, and they'd be joining the society.
And they'd have something to put on their resumes for future life.
But more than that, inside themselves, they would know that they are performing a function and not just standing on a street corner smoking.
My guest has been Victor Kiam, Chief Executive Officer of Remington Shavers.